Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, why it's still so hard to get aid into Gaza.
They strew, scatter and smash rice, flour and other much-needed food. These Israelis are determined to prevent this aid from reaching Palestinians in Gaza.
As more and more people go hungry in Gaza, Israeli settlers are violently attacking the aid supply. I'm Natasha Del Toro, and this is The Take. It was a Monday morning in May. Sapir Sluzker Amran, a human rights lawyer based in Tel Aviv, looked at her phone.
I got a message from a friend saying that the settlers are organizing in Tarkumia checkpoint, trying to block the humanitarian aid.
Sapir's been documenting the actions of settlers to gather evidence to show the public what they've been doing to block humanitarian aid going into Gaza.
I reached out to some friends, asked if anyone wants to come right now with me to Tarkumia to document, to understand a bit more about what's happening. And then one friend decided to join us. And when we arrived, so there was a few settlers there, blocking the checkpoint with their personal cars, personal vehicles. They were mostly young teenagers, a few elders. They're kind of laughing with the guards at the checkpoint. In the area when the trucks are organizing in order to enter Hebron and then to Gaza, we saw that some of the settlers are blocking the checkpoint with their cars. We saw the trucks waiting to drive to Gaza, but then some of the trucks were already looted. All over the floor there were bags of flour and sugar, instant noodles, things like that.
Sapir and her friend approached the Palestinian truck drivers to reload the aid back onto the truck.
We reorganized the food, trying to, save as much as we can. It wasn't the purpose for mission there. We were just there to document because it was very, we were just two women. And then the settlers came, a lot of teenagers.
By then, Sapir says about 150 of them had gathered. Many were armed.
They're coming with axes. They're coming with knives. They're bringing all kinds of sharp objects. They turned up the entire food all over again.
The settlers trashed Sapir's work.
Just took the boxes and threw them on the ground, and then climbed on the truck and started to confront them. And that's when they realized that I'm not with them.
So when they realized that you were not with them, what did they do? How did they respond to you?
I think at first they were shocked. Some looked at me like I was an alien, I think. Some just started to curse and trying to kind of push back, saying I'm supporting Hamas, I'm a traitor. What are we doing? Don't we want to free our hostages? And things like that. And the police, the IDF that was there, they were just standing aside. They just stood there and continued asking me to leave the premises. One of the settlers came and, was trying to block him in a non-violent way, but to resist him. He kind of slapped me really hard and then escaped. When I went and chased him, suddenly I saw that there was, an older policeman taking him and hiding him.
Protecting him,
taking him out. And they were just, I felt that they were like out of control. But then what happens when no one is setting boundaries? You can do whatever you want.
Oh.
And that was, I think, the first time that they were amazed by that. I heard them they were singing. They were dancing on the trucks. They were calling their friends, telling them, come fast, it's the best action we've ever had.
Sapir, this is not an isolated incident. I mean, there have been other reports of settlers attacking trucks from getting through.
They gathered at a roundabout on the highway heading south, carrying flags and weapons, carrying the same idea. They were going to stop humanitarian aid from getting to Gaza.
Do you have a sense of how these settlers know where to go, where these aid trucks are coming?
Yes, we know how they know because they published it. They're not ashamed. So it's all organized on WhatsApp, and they're getting the information from IDF soldiers and the police. And I said that it's organized by WhatsApp because they're sending that information on WhatsApp. There was like a welcoming message that was published in one of the groups saying, if you're new here, this is how we organize. And then they said, we only work with verified information. How do we verify it? One is getting information from the IDF or the police. So they said, if you know someone, if you have relatives, if you are in the IDF and working on those issues, if you're familiar with someone in the police, please contact us.
We spoke to Sapir yesterday, June 20th, and she still had these messages she was pulling up on her phone.
Yesterday, I saw a message in the WhatsApp groups in the morning saying tonight at 10 p.m., we're going to block one of the crossings, okay? So they knew hours before that in that particular time, there's going to be trucks. That's how they know.
So the soldiers are directly and openly sharing this information with them.
Yeah. Also, citizens send us these messages. So just as an example, let's check it right now.
You're going to read right now what the message says?
Yeah. So they're saying thank you to everyone that got to the blockings today, doesn't participate in Arabi, and then in Arad, another city. And they say, sane people believe and understand that those trucks and the fuel that's going to Hamas, they're not saying to Palestinians, they say to Hamas, it's completely insane. And it doesn't matter if we manage to block the aid or not. What matters is that the government see that there's people against it. The entire, Israelis are against it.
So this is why they say that they're doing this.
Yeah. They think that the entire aid going to Hamas, and it's going to Hamas even if it's going to kids. In Gaza, those kids in 10 years will be the next terrorist. In their perspective, it's Hamas anyway. And they really believe that, that most of the Israeli public thinks like that. And they think it's just, like a very small group of ultra-radical leftists that are against it. But they consider themselves as the representative of the entire Israelis and the entire Jewish nation. And it's because now they're in power, so they don't mind saying it.
So this is what they say in these WhatsApp groups. This is what you're reading when you look at these groups. All of this is happening, of course, as Palestinians are in dire need of humanitarian aid. I mean, there's widespread reports of famine. Aid groups say at least 500 trucks per day are needed, but only about 68 per day are actually going through.
Yeah. The reason that there's such a shortage with the aid coming to Gaza, it's because the government decided on a number of trucks. Even before the war, how do they decide what will enter Gaza and what will not? They say they're doing those calculations, saying, okay, the amount of calorie for each person every day is that number. So the government right now, if they could, they will block the humanitarian aid with a political decision. They can't do it, so they're encouraging their, puppets, their settlers on ground to do it for them. So that's why it's not entering. If Israel would have decided that there will be more humanitarian aid coming to Gaza, it will be like that.
After the break, what's the Israeli government's role in all of this? So, Sapir, you're not just a lawyer or an activist. I mean, you're an Israeli citizen, and you're watching how they're handling this question of aid. The Israeli government announced a pause this week in fighting during daytime hours in parts of the southern Gaza Strip to allow more aid to get in. But, how has this government responded to these settler attacks? What do they actually say about these settlers that are blocking the trucks?
The formal response was that they're trying. They're not supporting this action, but they're trying. That was in English, okay? When they spoke in English. When they speak in Hebrew,
I think it's legitimate to stop the aid trucks. I think it was appropriate to stop them in advance, because the Americans are pushing us, asking for aid to Gaza and stopping weapon shipments.
we have MKs, members of the parliament, well-known rabbis that also funded by the government, and many other officials, including mayors, saying, block them. They're saying it in Hebrew. They say, block them, and they're also participating in the blockage, okay? They're coming also to those actions.
So, Sapir, last week, the U.S. government announced that it was sanctioning an Israeli group called Tzav 9. It says that they've been attacking aid convoys. But if Israeli officials are supporting and encouraging these activities, how effective are sanctions as a punishment?
Look, I'm not sure. We're gathering evidence, and we're building a website with documentation of those organizations and specific people also that were involved in that. Because we do think that sanctions are a crucial part of trying to block their activities. I think that in Israel, there's not going to be any consequences. That's why they organize on WhatsApp with their names and phone numbers. They don't care, okay? They don't care. When they are, those settlers sharing information about the aid convoys and then photograph themselves or documenting themselves, asking more people to come, like showing that they're breaking the law and also invite other people to break the law.
And there's no repercussions.
And then you see on the background of the videos, you can see soldiers and police just standing there.
Let me ask you then, how reflective are these settlers' actions of how the wider Israeli public feels about aid to Palestinians?
It's a complicated story because we are all exposed to certain information and images and videos coming from Gaza. But I think people, they don't get that as Israelis, we don't get the same information. We don't see it in our social media or on the news channels in Hebrew. We won't get to see it. Only if I actively search the information. People think that there is no starvation in Gaza, okay? They think that the Palestinians are faking it to get sympathy for the world. When the rest of the world is watching videos of people begging for food, we see photos and videos from the market in Gaza when people are sitting in restaurants eating shawarma. Or, spending a fun day at the beach. This is the kind of images and information that we are exposed to. So some people, they're not supporting of that kind of blockage. They're saying we disagree with the government that's letting permission to those trucks to get into Gaza. But this is the decision and we accept it. And some think that if there is starvation in Gaza, it's Hamas' fault. And if it's Hamas' fault, they need to end the war. So they say, if they want to get food, bring us the hostages. Bring the hostages, we'll finish the war, and you can do whatever you want. But right now, as long as you're holding the hostages, but I do think the hostages, it's just an excuse. Even without that, if you don't care, you don't care. It doesn't matter if there's hostages. It doesn't matter if some of the aid goes to the Hamas and most of it goes to just poor Palestinian citizens. They don't see it like that.
Back in May, Sapir made a plea on Al Jazeera to Israelis and Jewish people around the world.
Leave it there. Sapir, Sluzker, Amran, thank you for speaking to us from Tel Aviv and sharing your experience.
If I may just to say, it's something that it's important to me to say as an Israeli, as a Jew. We have this command in Judaism: you shall not stand over the blood of your neighbor. And for me, I don't see the Palestinians and the Gazans as my neighbors, as my own people. And I say it with tears, because what happened today, what happened yesterday, do not represent many Israelis and many Jews. My family is Iraqi. They are Iraqi Jews. When I see grandmothers and grandfathers in Gaza begging for food, I see them in my own eyes, and we have to stop it. And this is our moral obligation to fight with our own people, with our own blood, in order to tell them what you're doing is wrong.
Why do you then think differently? I mean, why are you willing to put yourself in harm's way for the aid to get through to the Palestinians? You know, what drives you to do what you've been doing?
I think for me, it's the only thing that makes sense. You know, I was born and raised in Israel. This is my country. I see all the people in Gaza and the people in Palestine, the people in the Middle East, as my neighbors. My grandparents came from Iraq. I grew up as an Arab in a way. You know, my grandparents spoke with me in Arabic. When I see Palestinians, when I see people in Gaza, I see my family in a way. So I think I'm not doing it because I feel, you know, I'm ashamed of being Israeli. And I'm not doing it because I feel, you know, poor Palestinians, we need to help them. No, I think that we do need to live in an equal society. And we have to fight for it. And we have to pay prices for that. And I think that Jews, activists that are not doing it right now, kind of missing the opportunity, because like we're in the end of the opportunity to do it. In a few months, maybe in a few years, we won't get to have any kind of fragile democratic rights. And I hope to live and to see one day that there are no borders, and the Palestinians that used to be our enemies are now dancing with us in our parties. Even if it sounded naive, I hope that we will manage to do it.
Thank you so much. It's really powerful. And I know a lot of people are grateful for what you're doing and see that what you're doing is very brave.
Thank you, Natasha.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Tamara Khandaker, Khaled Soltan, Sarí el-Khalili, and Sonia Bhagat, with Amy Walters, Manahil Naveed, Duha Mossad, Mohammed Zain Shafi Khan, and me, Natasha Del Toro. In from Malika Bilal. This was edited by Noor Wazwaz. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer, and Ney Alvarez is Al Jazeera's head of audio. We'll be back tomorrow.